Good morning, and welcome to the virtual worship service of the Unitarian Universalist Meeting House of Provincetown. I am so glad that you are worshiping with us this morning. Do you remember when you were in grade school and the teacher would take attendance? As each name was called, the corresponding student would call out, "Present!" I never thought of it at the time, but that exercise was such an affirmation of showing up in the here and now, of being present, and announcing that to the world. These days, I feel like we fade in and out of presence. Our minds call us to memories of the past and the way things were, or are pulled easily into the future through worry and anxiety. It's very hard to stay in the here and now. Sometimes we even purposely numb ourselves or distract ourselves so that we won't have to be present. I have a few favorite ways of doing this, as I'm sure you do. For me, it's disappearing into a good book or binge watching a show on Netflix. Sometimes it's a useful tool to disappear for a while into another reality. But a lot of times we don't even realize that we are not in the present moment, not being present to those around us, not experiencing all there is to experience in the here and the now. But we have some good tools for becoming present too, like lighting a candle, focusing our attention, centering our energy, joining symbolically with each other through this simple ritual. This is something that we do each week. So as I light this chalice this morning, I invite you to light a candle wherever you are. I invite you to become present to your surroundings, to yourself, and to our faith community.
This is Claire, and I'm lighting a candle in Brookline.
Hello, this is Wave and Critters at B Street Garden, lighting a candle.
This is Brenda in Provincetown.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, down the road, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, yes, oh, down the road, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, down the road, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Oh, yeah, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Have a great day.
Our prayer this morning is Listening with the Heart by Gary Kowalski. Maybe prayer doesn't mean talking to God at all. Maybe it means just listening. Unplugging the TV, turning off the computer, quieting the mental chatter and distractions. Maybe it means listening to the birds and the insects, the wind in the leaves, the creaking and groaning of the trees. Noticing who else is out there, not far away but nearby. Sitting so still we can hear our heartbeat. Watch our breath, the gentle whoosh of air, the funny noises from our own insides. Marveling at the body we take so much for granted. Maybe it means listening to our dreams, paying more attention to what we really want from life, and less attention to all the nagging, scolding voices from our past. Or maybe it's all about listening to each other, not thinking ahead to how we can answer or rebut or parry or advise or admonish, but actually being present to each other. Perhaps if we just sit quietly, we'll overhear a peace whispering through the centuries. That's missing from the clamor of the moment. Maybe prayer means listening to the silences between the words, noticing the negativity of space, the vast, undifferentiated, and nameless wonder that underlies it all. Maybe prayer doesn't mean talking to God at all, but listening with the heart to the angel choirs all around us. Those who have ears, let them hear.
Wisdom by John O'Donohue. A tree is a perfect presence. It is somehow able to engage and integrate its own dissolution. The tree is wise in knowing how to foster its own loss. It does not become haunted by the loss nor addicted to it. The tree shelters and mimes the loss. Out of this quiet comes the dignity and poise of a tree's presence. Trees stand beautifully on the clay. They stand with dignity. A life that wishes to honor its own possibility has to learn, too, how to integrate the suffering of dark and bleak times into a dignity of presence. Letting go of old forms of life, a tree practices hospitality towards new forms of life. It balances the perennial energies of winter and spring within its own living bark. The tree is wise in the art of belonging. The tree teaches us how to journey. Too frequently, our inner journeys have no depth. We move forward feverishly into new situations and experiences which neither nourish nor challenge us because we have left our deeper selves behind. It is no wonder that the addiction to superficial novelty leaves us invariably empty and weary. Much of our experience is literally superficial. It slips deftly from surface to surface. It lacks rootage. The tree can reach towards the light, endure wind, rain, and storm precisely because it is rooted. Each of its branches is ultimately anchored in a reliable depth of clay. The wisdom of the tree balances the path inwards and the pathway outwards.
A life that wishes to honor its own possibility has to learn, too, how to integrate the suffering of dark and bleak times into a dignity of presence. Letting go of old forms of life, a tree practices hospitality toward new forms of life. How do we integrate the suffering of bleak times while still welcoming new forms of life? How do we stay present when all we want to do is flee this new reality? Perhaps the trees offer us an answer with their rootedness. Can we root ourselves in this experience without being overcome by it? This winter I read an amazing book about Dr. Jerry Nielsen, a woman doctor who overwintered at the South Pole Research Station in Antarctica in 1998. After a particularly devastating divorce, which included losing custody of her children, Dr. Nielsen decided to completely shake up her life in a different way. She signed up to serve as the medical doctor at the isolated research station on the South Pole for an entire year. Included in this year would be the experience of overwintering on the pole, which meant spending 6 months in almost total darkness with a temperature of negative 76 degrees. Can you imagine? Always a remote location, in winter the station is completely cut off from the world. Maybe this total paradigm shift would allow her to move on with her life, she thought. And it did, really, but not in the ways she thought it would. I came here with a list of things to accomplish, she writes. I did none of them. Instead, those things lost meaning. New goals and ideas took their place, goals that I would not have imagined in my former life. I was too busy then to think and to see. There was way too much background noise in my existence. I've been very struck during this pandemic about the strange similarities between being on lockdown to prevent the spread of this virus and the experience of the winter over crew at the South Pole. Take, for instance, the extra consideration of others that is required. Since the walls between living spaces were either light pressboard or canvas, Dr. Nielsen says, you should never talk in the halls or above a whisper in your rooms. There was a right way and a wrong way to close the refrigerator-like doors so as not to wake day sleepers. Basically, you needed to be as unobtrusive as possible in a small, overcrowded environment where people lived too closely for too long. we had to be introduced slowly to the notion of giving more than you have and using less than you need, of living without privacy, of knowing that all you really own are your own thoughts. Does this resonate with anyone sheltering in place with your families or your roommates? What about this? All the supplies and utilities were finite at the pole. Conceptually, I could understand this, she says, but in time I came to live it. It was good that we all had less than we could use. It made things more precious and life less messy. Later, I would come to deeply understand that the human resources of the base were also finite. As there were no spare parts for the machines, there were no spare people either. As our winter over crew dealt with each crisis in turn, it was abundantly clear that each of us played an important role that was necessary for the survival of the group. Not only were our job skills all equally needed and diverse, strengths of personality and character were also different and vital to the survival of the group. I came to see how, in order to build a society, you need people of diverse temperaments, social and intellectual skills. But as the darkness and sameness of endless winter continued with fewer and fewer resources, I watched the group undergo previously unimaginable challenges. Each person's strengths became more obvious, as did the weaknesses. Sometimes weaknesses became strengths and vice versa. A seemingly weak person may have a wonderful gift of patience and empathy, insight and organization, while a seemingly strong person might be disguising insecurities and fears with bluster. The movers and shakers might easily succumb to boredom. Like energetic animals in a cage, these individuals could drive the others crazy. Fortunately, in every emergency, the petty squabbles tended to disappear, and the tribe pulled together to survive. All that matters here are the things that really matter. She's describing us now, right? But what I really wanted to share with you this morning is what Dr. Nielsen came to learn about presence. Here on the ice, it has only been the ice for me, she says. I have noticed that the people who have done well in this circumstance are the ones who have made a life here, fully in the present. Those who don't do well pine for sweethearts at home, write to their wives every day, or live on the internet. They are never really here. It is only what they do to have something to write home about. As winter lingers, Dr. Nielsen writes, the mind becomes duller. With this dullness, for some, comes decreased internal coping strategy. For others, it permits a deepening of understanding, charity, and a new clarity of thought. It is the difference between a prisoner of war who goes permanently insane and a monk who finally finds the God that he has been searching for. They are in the same environment of lack, pain, discomfort, humiliation, deprivation of the senses. One chooses to be there, one does not. And yet there are monks who go mad and POWs who find the true meaning of life. The people who have done well in this circumstance are the ones who have made a life here, fully in the present. You should definitely read Dr. Nielsen's memoir about her time in Antarctica. It's called Icebound, a doctor's incredible battle for survival at the South Pole. It's also been turned into a TV movie where she is apparently played by Susan Sarandon. Dr. Nielsen became famous, you see, when she developed breast cancer halfway through that winter on the pole, and ended up operating on herself to increase her chances of survival. I am awed by her courage and her bravery. But most of all, I was pulled in by her simple observations about the human spirit before and after her cancer diagnosis. Many of us at Pole are searchers, she says. Many are travelers, and many have come as I did to destroy demons and to find answers. We also came to see how much we could count on ourselves and our abilities alone. More often, we have found and conquered demons, thoughts, weaknesses, questioning of the self that we did not before know existed. And in doing so, we have learned that those things that plagued us in the world were not important or had gone to rest years ago. For some reason, we had chosen to keep them alive. Here, you can let go of those thoughts and embrace the newly discovered strengths that only this place can illuminate. More and more, as I am here and see what life really is, she says, I understand that it is not when or how you die, but how and if you truly were ever alive. Though I would wish this pandemic to end any minute now, when we do come to the end of it, and we are asked what our experience was of this time, I'm not sure how I'll answer. But I hope that I can say, at the very least, present. Amen, and blessed be.
Standing like a tree with my roots dug down, my branches wide and open. Come down the rain, come down the sun, come down the fruit to a heart that is open to be standing like a tree with my roots dug down, my branches wide and open. Come down the rain, come down the sun, come down the fruit to a heart that is open to be standing like a tree with my roots dug down, my branches wide and open. Come down the rain, come down the sun, come down the fruit to a heart